Super excited to be here because I get to talk about my favorite topic other than my kids, although I kind of weave them into this presentation for sure. Um, so I love math. I wasn't always a math lover, but I love math. Um, and so I'm happy to impart some of the things that I have learned along the way, and hopefully you'll get to pick up some new ideas and fresh perspectives so that you can bring math into the home and into the learning experiences for your own students. All right, let's get going. And if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. And Lonnie and Gloria, if you could just keep track of them, and so that we can I can answer them at the end, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and keep me honest about the time. All right. So, what do I love about math? And this was kind of my epiphany. And math provides an intimate window into a child's thinking. It's not about getting the right answer or uh, being able to solve a worksheet. To me, it reveals what's going on in a child's mind or a student's mind. And so these are, oh, it says resume share. Can you guys see my presentation? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I can see your slides.
Okay, great. Um, sorry about that. Let me take down this chat. Okay, so this is my oldest daughter when she was younger. And when I think about math, I think about this face that I want to see on a student, full of wonder and curiosity. And then here is a picture of my youngest. I want them to have fun and be happy. And if they aren't having that, then that's worth further investigation. And they are also reminders, my kids, is that learning math, unlike learning how to read, is in our biology. Even babies, when they are young, um, can do math. They have a sense of number. And so, this, if anything that you take from this, lots of people say, I'm not a math person, I can't do math. You are born, and your students are born to do math. It is in our biology to do math, and specifically number. So, I want to share with you this developmental way that humans build upon their math abilities. It's called the number sense trajectory. So, what is this? Number sense is an emerging construct that refers to a child's fluidity and flexibility with numbers, the sense of what numbers mean, and an ability to perform mental mathematics and to look at the world and make comparisons. When I was growing up, my teachers and my parents definitely focused on being fluid and fluent in um, in number, but I was not, nothing was cultivating my flexibility with numbers. And so I actually grew up with very poor number sense. And as I continue to cultivate my flexibility, my number sense is getting much stronger. Okay, so here, what is the trajectory? We're going to start with this first concept. It's called subitizing, and it's being able to visually recognize a quantity of 5 or less. There are different levels of subitizing, but let's go ahead and go through uh, uh, an exercise. I am going to show some dots on the screen, and I'm going to show it very briefly. And in the chat window, please say what you notice, or write how many dots you see. Okay, I think that's the next slide. So bear with me. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, here, let's try again. 1, 2, 3. How many dots did you see? And I'll give you just a second and people can write in the chat what they saw. Let's see. Okay, I'm seeing some 7s. I'm seeing 8, 8, 7s, 8, 7s. All right. I am going to share the next screen by providing some structure to those dots. I'm going to reposition those dots so there is some structure. And then you're going to tell me how many dots you see. Oops, hold on. Woo! How many dots did you see? Woo! All right, I'm seeing some 7s. Yep, some 7s. Let's go back and revisit that. Okay, so here we have, I put a structure around this, and you may see your human brain is processing maybe this 4 right here, or 5 on top and 2 at the bottom, or 4 as a square with 3, and then processing that as you calculate or know how many dots there are. Now, let's go back to this image, very scattered. You in your adult brain may have grouped some of these dots together. Like you might be seeing 2 3s and a 1, or there may be 3s at the top and 4s at the bottom. In whatever way that your brain made sense of these dots, it's totally developmental. In a child's brain, when they've not been exposed to these groupings, they may be counting this 1 by 1 by 1. But as their number sense is developing, as they're growing and being exposed to dice patterns, card patterns, they are imposing a structure onto these objects, and they need practice doing that. But it is within their innate ability to do this. And so teachers will sometimes introduce 10 frames like this. I use Reckon Rex as a way to cultivate the subitizing skill, but that's subitizing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next developmental sense. I also use, these are called Van de Waal cards. You can just type in Van de Waal. I print them out and laminate. I'm like a laminating queen, and I'm a huge collector of these dot cards, and I play lots of games with them. Oh, I'm gonna skip that. Okay, so the second developmental progression in number sense is being able to compare quantities by identifying which has more and which has less. Now, I can walk into a preschool classroom or even at the kitchen table when we're having dessert. And when my kids were younger, I might put 3 cookies on my husband's plate and 1 cookie on their plate. And they're like, that's not fair. They're comparing. They may not be able to say 1 and 3 yet, but they can compare at a very young age. Students with mathematics difficulties tend to compare, though close numbers have a difficulty comparing 2 numbers. Let's say this is 7, this is 8. Kids with mathematics difficulties might have a hard time knowing that 8 is 1 more than 7. So giving them opportunities to compare number in dot form, not the abstract form, is critical to cultivating that flexibility and skill set of number sense. So You can use dot cards, you can use playing cards, you can use dice, and ask for which one's more or less. Um, these are some examples of comparison game ideas that you can incorporate at home. And this also, even up into the 5th grade, as students are comparing numbers in the millions, this is also, you can make this as hard or as simple. I don't want to say that simple is easy because it's not, but you can simplify it to cultivate this comparison idea. And the election is one that I'm using with my high school students and looking at the electorate and the total popular count are certainly numbers that we've been analyzing in my high school classroom. Okay, next one. Number sense trajectory is counting. Counting is the oral part of math. And so it is, how do I say this? This does need to be taught. We need to put the language and connect it to the objects that we are trying, that the child or the student already innately is aware of and analyzing and evaluating during their development. So now we need to put the oral language connection to number. And so here's some oral counting routines. Choral counting. I would do this in the car as we were commuting to and from school with my own kids. And then when I would volunteer in early elementary classrooms, we would sit during circle time, choral counting with a beanbag, or this is called my Magic 10 wand. We would pass around and we would either sing it together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, always adding 0 in. We would skip count. We would count by decades, 11, 21, 31, 41. I might ask a student, how old are you? And they may say 10. And I say, okay, well, let's count by tens, 10, 20, 30. And then even making it more complicated, counting by fractions, but forwards and backwards. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 1. 4/3, 5/3, 6/3, 2. 7/3, 8/3, and then backwards. This predict the number that comes next. Another game that I would do, let's say that there's a circle with 30 kids in it. I might be holding one and I'd be like, that student right directly across from me, what number do you think that'll land on? And so that was always fun to kind of estimate, to see the person halfway around the circle, what number would they be? So that's oral counting. One-to-one correspondence. This is a behavior. I'm going to share a video. Okay, so this is an example of an activity that can be done that demonstrates one-to-one correspondence.
Friends, so to go to gym today, I'm going to have you tell me how many dots you see. Are you guys ready? Yeah. Leon, do you want to go first? Yeah. Okay. Okay, show me how many. Oh, I see that you showed me 3 fingers for 3 dots. Go ahead and go sit by your locker. Okay, show me how many. Yeah, I like the way you showed me 3. 3 fingers for 3 dots. Okay, Arnold, are you ready?
What? I didn't see him.
He just got here. Okay, Arnold, you're gonna show me on your fingers how many. Are you ready?
Arnold, did you see everyone?
I see that you showed me on 2 hands. You showed me 2 and 1. That is 3 for the 3 dots. Go ahead and go to your locker. Jordan, are you ready? Okay, show me how many. Oh, good try. You showed me 4 fingers. There are 2 dots. Go ahead and go to your locker. Okay, King, are you ready? Okay, let's see. Ready? You're right. You showed me 3. 3 fingers. Go ahead and go to your locker.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it. I noticed a few things. I had talked about flexibility in the earlier part of the presentation, and there are children. What I notice is that when she shows 3 dots, there are children who's showing 3 in different ways. One is showing 2 in one finger, another one is showing 3 this way, another one is showing 3 this way. They're all showing 3. And then I noticed she had asked a student to show 2, and the student showed 4. And she did what was a way to reinforce one-to-one correspondence. She took her 2 fingers and matched them to those 2 dots. And that right there is that developmental kind of milestone that happens when students have arrived at one-to-one correspondence. And it first happens with 1-to-1, and then numbers of 2 and 3, and then it happens at 5, and then a benchmark for 10, usually because we have 10 fingers. But it can, again, be more complicated or simple, but it is part of the number sense trajectory. And it can be a struggle for students with mathematics difficulties, but now that you know about the number sense trajectory, if your student is having difficulties, this may be an area in which they need more practice on. Okay, now I'm going to go back to sharing my presentation. Okay. Okay, let's move on. The next one is called cardinality. And so this was always an interesting thing that I noticed with my oldest, is that she might see an image like 5, and she knows that's 5. But when I asked her, how many dots do you see? She would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, instead of saying, well, I know that's 5, and counting on 6, 7, 8. This is the difference between going from one-to-one correspondence to cardinality. Is being able to hold that number in your head and to count on. So I'm going to show another video related to cardinality, and we'll come back and talk about some activities that you can do to promote cardinality and more sophisticated counting routines that a lot of students, even as I'm working with students in middle school, there are little places where I can still see it, that this is a place that can be hard for them. So let me do a new share. Do you see, you are sharing your screen? Okay, great. Let's play this one. And these videos have all been, this is a great resource, the Early Math Collaborative at the Erickson Institute. They have such great video and resources for
what's this?
early math.
8, 7.
So then what's this going to be?
8.
8. All right. Were you right? Okay. What's the number right before 6? What's that
5.
one? 5? You sure, huh? All right. What's this number?
10.
What's the number right before 10?
1, 10, 11.
What number was it? What number was it? What do you call this number? Do you remember? It's 9. This is 9, this is 10. You said 11. 11 would be right here. All right, what's this number?
3,
What's this one all the way up here?
6,
You feel very sure about that. And you were right. Here's this one.
5,
And then what's this one all the way up here? What do you think? This was 5. What's that one? Could you figure it out some way?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
See, well, I said this one, so yeah, what you said.
9.
You said 8, I think. Want to try that again? I'll keep my finger here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 9.
You were right the first time. It was 8. I think you got confused. Let's.
This 9.
You think so? Where is 9? There you go.
Okay, so what this illustrates to me, what I'm noticing about this particular student is the fact that she seems to be very accurate in numbers 1 through 6. Being able to hold that number where she's at 3 and knowing that the next one was, or, 2 over, the third one, 3 going to 6. But that 9, 10 was really tricky for her. And so I see this a lot for students, even when we're talking about 1,000. What's one less than 1,000? And 999 is so tricky for them. They are, it's like a deer in headlights. And so being able to practice one more or one less, even for those big benchmarks of powers of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, all of those, all the way up through middle school, are things that are routinely needed. That cardinality continues to evolve over time. Okay, and then again, these, sorry. These cards, again, I rely on for one more and one less. What's really interesting in counting backwards, I can say there's 8. What's one less than 8? And I might have deer in headlights, and we might hide one, and they will go back and count 1-to-1 correspondence instead of saying 8, 7. I don't know. It's more opportunities to practice, but it is developmental. If they don't have a good foundation with early number, more simple numbers like this, it will continue on through bigger magnitude of numbers. Okay, so, hierarchical inclusion. There aren't that many games for this, but this was a particular study that Piaget did with students between the ages of 4 and 9, I believe. And it just is, oh wait, no, I take it back. That's number conversation. Conservation, hierarchical inclusion. There are lots of games for this. I'm so sorry. This is a number sense skill where you see parts and wholes, where the student is able, and this is where the flexibility comes in, where they are able to see parts and wholes. I'm going to play a game with Gloria or Lonnie. Can I have you as a volunteer, please? Which one will it be?
Me.
All right. Woohoo! Okay. You and I are going to play a game called Splat. If I can share. Nope. New share. Okay, hold on. Escape. Here it is. Let me know if you can see. These are free. Let me know when you see a white screen.
I see a white screen.
Okay, so these are free to download, both in PowerPoint and Google Slides, from a website called Steve Wyborny. And it's a game called Splat. And it practices both hierarchical inclusion as well as subitizing. I love this game. So do my students. I play this high school students, middle school students, and elementary students. So what do you notice?
What do I notice? So 2 blue dots, and then 6 circles with 1/3 colored in green.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I noticed 2 blue dots and 6 1/3 colored into green. What happens if I were to, I wonder if I could draw this. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. I've done this before. That would be bad. What if I were to group 3 of these 1/3 together? What would that be?
It'll be 1 green dot.
It would be one.
Combine them together.
Yeah, if we combine them all together, let's just call that one whole. Is that okay? And we can name it green too. So okay, so then we've grouped 3 of these dots. Can we group another 3 of those dots, and that would also equal a whole?
Mm-hmm.
So how many holes do you think there are?
4.
4. I noticed that too. Let's see. What number? He says 4 too, but that could be said lots of different ways. It could be 2 and 6 1/3. It could be 2 and 6/3. It could be 2 and 3/3 and another 3/3. I might hear all different kinds of ways of naming what we see on this picture, but they all, arrive at 4. Okay, I hit splat. What do you notice outside of that big splat?
So 1 blue dot, so that's 1 hole, and then 1/3 of green.
I noticed that too. I wonder how many are underneath the splat.
Uh-oh. We'll have 1 blue, 1 whole blue.
Yeah.
1 whole green, and then 2 dots that are 1/3 colored in green.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wonder about that too. And I think I have that in my brain too. Let's see what's underneath the splat. The 1 whole blue, 3 greens that make 1 whole, and 2 1/3. Yes. All right. So what's going on here? We've got this whole, all, the 4 of this whole picture, and then that splat. And so this forces the brain to look at this number in parts. And you had to either recall what that original image was and evoke that in words to describe what you were seeing in your brain, in your mind's eye. Another student might say, well, that's 4, okay, and I see 1 and 1/3, so I know that there's got to be 2, at least 2. If I add 2 to that 1 and 1/3, that's going to be 3 and 1/3. And so how am I going to make that 1/3 another whole? So they may refer back to that whole number 4 and reason their way into what's under that splat. And this is a perfect activity for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Very developmentally appropriate with fractions, but you can do this with 10 bars. You can do this with just single dots. You can do this. He has splat leveled games all the way from that are appropriate for pre-K through 8th grade. So
this is a website, and parents can go to the website and download these.
Oh yeah,
slides.
And it's free. Okay. And right now,
Great.
Well, he has other games too. He has SD Mysteries, which are also leveled K through high school. Well, I use it for high school students, but I think it's K8. He has 4 different kinds of games, but they're a lot of fun. And I used to, and I think I'm probably going to do it this weekend, is my dad used to read cartoons with me in bed on Sunday mornings. I used to play Splat with my girls on Sunday mornings. We all huddle into the bed and play Splat. So it's a fun game.
Yeah, it's fun, and they're learning. And when I share your slides with our audience, they'll be able to see where they should go to download the slides, right?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Steve Wyborny, Splat. Going back to the presentation. Okay, so going back to number sense trajectory, and going back to number conservation, the Piaget, there's not very many games, but I'll explain to you that's just kind of an oddity, I guess, in the developmental milestones of students, of children, is this idea of number conservation. So he would present a row of vases and put them kind of close together. And so this top row of dots symbolizes those vases that he would use in this exercise. And he would ask children, how many do you see? And they would say, I see 5. And then he'd say, oh, okay. And then he would rearrange those vases so that they were more apart. And he would ask them, is this the same number? And they said, no, it's not the same number. And he goes, well, is it more or less than the number before? And they would say it's more. And so this was consistent among developing children, that that number, that there was like a developmental trigger in there as they were growing up, where they were able to conserve, no matter how those vases were configured, that 5 was 5, no matter what pattern it might be. But this also, to me, as I was learning about number sense and these subitizing, this recurring theme that numbers are spatial. We often forget that, not even forget, but not even acknowledge that numbers, how we perceive numbers and how we manipulate numbers, not numerals, those abstract symbols that represent numbers, are spatial. Our brain processes them spatially. And so when you have a student who also, and this goes back to Lonnie, because she's an occupational therapist, and I know that you do assessments based on visual perception, I've noticed that students with visual perceptual differences in how they perceive the world visually, not in terms of low vision, but just what is that, completion, whether they're all those little tests. Thank you, Lottie. Tell me those visual perception things that go on in that test. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, okay. That they are.
There we go. So things like visual closure.
Yes.
Things like object permanence, but probably like visual closure is what you were thinking of.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. There is a connection with mathematics difficulties. And so while it's not named in reports from your school psych or in IEP team meetings as they're evaluating these visual tests results, but to me as an ed therapist, that are little breadcrumbs as to like, oh, well, I'm going to investigate in terms of this number sense because numbers are spatial.
Now that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, it should be a yellow flag to further
Yeah.
investigate. Not a red flag, but a yellow flag. All right, going back to recommended materials as your home. I really like, it's a paid app called Toto Math. It is a pre-K through, I would say, middle, third grade curriculum. Lots of activities. It is so much content that it would last years. If you are starting at the pre-K range, it's an app that can grow with you. I think there's my now that my kids are older, but they used to play it in Chinese because they wanted to learn Chinese. And so I like that there's multiple languages supported. My husband's also Chinese American, and so that was always a big win in our house. But Toto Math is an app that I strongly recommend. And this is a free app, but it's also a website called Bedtime Math. And I personally liked buying the books. Those are not free, but there are narratives. It's a story, and then they'd have leveled questions that would be appropriate from kids pre-K through 5th grade. And quite honestly, even now today with my girls, the most challenging questions related to the narrative, and you might learn about the world record hot dog eater, or the phenomenon of tornadoes, or historical event like human beings going to the moon. It was always just kind of rich narratives that they would build in questions related to math and number after you read this bedtime math story.
Anna, do you have these resources on your slides?
Can you not see my slide?
No, we're still looking at the slide.
Oh no!
Screen.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay, sorry. Thank you for coming on. Here I am talking. How about that?
Great. Yeah.
Okay, and that was Toto Math. And this is Bedtime Math. And it's a free app and website. But the challenge at the end was they would do the earlier questions, and the challenge was for me to do the highest level questions. Sometimes they were bonus questions, and oftentimes my husband and I would do the questions separately and then come together and share how we solved it. And sometimes I arrived at the correct answer. Sometimes we did not agree on the correct answer, but it was always delightful to reveal what the correct answer was, and for the girls to see how imperfect their mommy was. But this, I think, is also something that you can impart on your students, that we are growing and learning all the time. And me at 50, needs to find wonder and curiosity about solving meaningful problems. And that we aren't always going to arrive at the same place at the same time. And we need help along the way. So that's always a lesson that I think is important to impart on our students, that they don't see us as perfect mathematicians, but we try and learn from our mistakes. Okay, Rec and Rex. You'll get a copy of this presentation. I'm not going to go to this YouTube link, but this tool is called a Rec and Rec, and it helps to develop number sense. And so I'll just do an example really quick. It's 10:46. There are 20 beads on this, 10 at the bottom, 10 at the top. If I put 5 over here, you might notice 5 on top and 10 at the bottom. 1, 10, and 5 is 15. And you might be able to make 10 different ways. There's 10 that way. There's 10 this way, and this builds the flexibility. There's 10 this way. Or I might ask a student, I have 7, how many more do I need to make 10? And they may say, oh, there's 10 red down here. Or they say, just take 10, there's 3 down here, just take 3 white ones from the top. And so using the Rec and Rec that way to develop fluency and flexibility within 20, and then there's Rec and Recs that are 100. I like using dice and cards. Cards lend themselves well, at least to the digital environment, because I'm holding up cards in front of the camera for some of my students, and they're virtual dice too. Just type in virtual dice in Google and virtual dice come up. Google has a native web-based app that has virtual dice. And then I really like reading books. I want to get away from some of the manipulatives in the workbooks and just enjoy stories. And so one of my favorite one is Anno's Math Games. And Mitsumasa Anno has a whole series. He's a Japanese math educator, probably in his 70s now, that have these delightful and beautiful, intricate drawings and visual narratives that that really help to engage students of all ages and parents in math discussion. The Grapes of Math, Greg Tang is an American math educator, and he has a whole wide range of math books. But The Number Devil is a book. It's a novel study that I did with my middle school students last summer online, and it's very, very appropriate for grades 5 through 8th grade. And it's about a middle school boy who does not like math, who when he goes to bed is visited by the number devil, and the number devil introduces concepts like 0 and infinity and Fibonacci, the Fibonacci circle, the Fibonacci phenomenon, I forget what other, I feel like it's like the math version of Alice in Wonderland. It's a really fun book. And I will try to wrap this up really quick so we have rooms for questions. Just 2 more things that I want to leave you with, that in addition to this number sense, that there is a developmental progression of students and in their need to use objects. This is called concrete or representational, to draw pictures, and then abstract. And oftentimes in the early years, we rush to the abstract too quickly. And so I like to marry, and when I'm giving lessons, that and this is hard to do virtually, but I do have a virtual whiteboard, and I will draw pictures to marry with the abstract expressions and equations. And I ask students to do that too. I'm gonna take, so I'm gonna go backwards. When we learn language, babies are exposed to listening language at home, and then they begin to babble and talk, and then they learn to read and write. Now, when I was growing up, and learning math, I was expected to read and write math and listen to lessons and to read and write math, and then talk about it. And what I'm proposing is that we introduce more of a verbal language related to math first, and follow the same sequence as we would to learning to speak and read and write in our native languages. Mine is English. And so just math is also a language. It is a universal language. And so to follow the same sequence, to listen, to talk and have conversations with our kids so that they can tell us what they're thinking, and then to expect and to teach how to read and write in math. And so I'll close, and I'm happy to take any kinds of questions.
So Anna, my question is, you talked a lot about the importance of, for example, oral counting, right? Connecting the speech with the math activities. So my question to you is, what are the implications for kids then who are, let's say, nonverbal or have very significant language impairment? What does, does that impede their ability to learn math?
No, it shouldn't. It should not impede their ability to learn math, but you do need to be mindful about who your learner is. And so, so I think sometimes one might take the strategy to be like, let's just eliminate the language and work in pictures. And my approach is surround that learner with even more oral language. You're going to be talking all the time, mathematic words. And then what I do is, I tend to make multiple choice matching types of activities. So even though a student may not be able to name, like I might say, how much is that? And a verbal student might say 5, or they might count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will give the student a selection of 2 cards and be like, will you grab the card that is 5? And they will grab the card that is 5. That will keep the language, they're exposed to it, but you're not dependent on it in terms of finding the right answer.
Right. So, use strategies that does not make it harder for your student, right? So if language is their difficulty, you don't want them to have to, number one, learn the math, but also struggle to use language to express. So I like the multiple choice idea. I think, it makes it easier for our kids. And then last but not least, in the introduction, Lani had talked about how you are also an advocate, for kids with special needs. So, I think for a lot of families in the audience today, we want to know, what are some accommodations that you commonly recommend to students with special needs that might be helpful? And especially during the time of virtual learning too, families are wondering what accommodations make sense, in the virtual format as it relates to math.
Yeah. So for learners with fine motor who are not able to write as well, and it may not be developmentally appropriate for them to type in a keyboard yet, one accommodation is for them to create concrete models of the activity that they're being asked to do. So let's say the activity is 3 + 5, and that's in a worksheet. I might have a series of blocks and be like, okay, and they've already had a lesson that plus means to join, that they create a model of 3 and 5 and show it. And I take pictures. I take pictures to demonstrate to teams that the student understands conceptually what's being asked of them, but they may not be able to write it. And so that can be an accommodation in an IEP of being able to make concrete models. I also am a big fan of Montessori materials, and that is actually part of the general curriculum in the Montessori. Is students are asked to make concrete models all the time to represent what they understand.
Great.
And another accommodation is another accommodation, but this is also a best teaching practice, and it depends what curriculum is being used at the school site. But that the student receive instruction in all 3 formats of concrete, representational, and abstract simultaneously in order to access the lessons. So if I have gone into the classroom and have watched a lesson and have seen the teacher only do things in abstract, then that needs to be an explicit accommodation in the IEP. If it's already being done as part of the lesson, it's a nice to have in the IEP, but to me, it's a best practice, and it is the recommendation from the National Conference of Teaching Mathematics. It's what they should be doing anyway, but not all teachers do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have quite a few questions here. I know we're near the end of our time, and so maybe we'll address one more, and the rest of the questions I'll send to you, Anna. And maybe if you have time to answer, and I'll share it to the group in a follow-up email if that works for you, Anna.
Sure. I can stay.
What do you think, Lani? Let's pick one more question to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Do you want to pick, Gloria, or do you want me to pick?
Do you want to pick one, Lani?
Okay.
From
an OT perspective, I like this question. I like all of your questions, but I'm going to pick the one that's talking about everyday life opportunities to teach concepts other than cooking, because that's one that's apparently being used. But
well, so I think it depends on the age or what's developmentally appropriate for the particular student. And I'm not sure about the attendees of this webinar, but as adults, we are so exposed now to visual models of number. And then you could see that during the election. And so if you look at the visual models of number of COVID cases, or like I did a lesson on exponents and exponential growth. And you can look at how one person is infected with COVID, and if they meet 5 people, and then those 5 people end up meeting other 5 people, that is a representation of exponential growth. That, you know, younger students, you don't tend to teach exponents until 5th grade, but that is something that you can start to introduce to younger students about. One person gets sick with the flu or whatever, and they have a party, and it just continues on. These are natural phenomenons that happen that we have given mathematical language to, but then also these graphs and these pictures, what do they mean? And just to expose them to these pictorial, these visual data sets that are so powerful and more accessible now than they ever were when I was growing up. We just saw numbers in an article, some news article, and now there's all kinds of this is a whole specialty now that you can see online, these pictures.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good idea. Thank you so much, Anna. And as I said earlier, some of you have submitted questions. I'll share all of your questions with Anna, and hopefully she'll have time to answer. And today's webinar is being recorded. I'll send you all a link to the recording. And I want to thank you, Anna, so much for sharing your knowledge with us this morning. It's been really helpful and fascinating. Thank you. And thank you, Lani, for representing the Phoenicia Foundation. And I hope you all have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you so much. See you all next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.